Welcome to a special edition of 805 Sports Talk. Yes, it's our regularly scheduled Wednesday program, but we got a special edition as far as football talk goes because this show is all about high school football. If you follow Lorenzo on Twitter or check out our website, you may have noticed that we are at St. Joseph High School on Saturday. We had our third annual LCCN Media Day. 11 teams from the area came, players and coaches from all those teams. We had 11-man teams there, 2 8-man teams, and Hancock College represented as well. It was a long, hectic morning with so much information coming at us. So now we have some time to kind of let all that stuff sink in, and we're going to delve into a lot of that information that we gained talking to dozens and dozens of players and coaches on Saturday. We got started around 7 o'clock on Saturday morning at St. Joseph High School. It was so early, the players at St. Joe were still sleeping in their tents. They're having their weekend overnight camp that weekend, and St. Joseph was there Lompoc was there bright and early. Lompoc coach Andrew Jones likes to get his team going early, get there and get out because they usually have practice on Saturdays. So we started with Lompoc. It's kind of been the tradition the last 3 years, starting with Lompoc. Lorenzo, you're our Lompoc Valley reporter. You caught up with some of the star power that Lompoc is bringing back this year. I talked to Coach Jones a little bit, but we'll start with you. What were some of the things that you gleaned from talking to the players, their confidence level, their hunger to get back on the field after the way last season ended? What was your kind of vibe from those guys?
I could tell that there's one day out of the whole year last year that resonates in their minds, and it's Black Friday of last year. It was that day where they went down to Orange County. They had that epic back and forth between themselves and Corona Del Mar, and unfortunately their season ended on that day. So in talking to Toa Tawa, Shamar Savage, Dallas Canley, those guys are fueled by that game. And additionally, in talking to Dallas Canley, he wasn't in the lineup. I mean, he had his season-ending injury, which occurred in the Cabrillo game. So there's that motivation, and then there's also the motivation of staying healthy, getting back on the field, and just being a valuable contributor to that running game and that defense. But, the vibe I got from talking to all the players, also Ruben Cortez and Johnny Manzo, they all cite that Black Friday game as their motivation moving forward.
Yeah, so much for us being on the media has happened since that game, but they haven't been on the field since. So that still sticks in their mind, and I'm sure they're hungry to get out there and get started at AG on Friday, August 25th. I caught up with Coach Jones a little bit. He's always confident, always kind of matter-of-factly and business as usual. He has a great approach to coaching, and just talking to him, it sounds like they're not going to take a step backwards at all, and in fact, they might be better than they were last year. Talking to him about some of the star power they have, the skill position players they have. I threw a question at him. When was the last time that you had these many skill position players? Have you ever had this many skill position players? And he was like, yeah, last year. So many of these guys were on that team last year, and so many were big contributors. And you mentioned Dallas Canley. I think he's kind of a underrated guy. Talking to Jones, he think he might be a top 5 player in the area, and he might be right. Dallas can contribute all over the field. So Lompoc's stacked. I think they're confident, and they're hungry to start at AG on August 25th and kind of put that memory of what happened at Corona Del Mar in the rearview mirror. Cabrillo was right after Lompoc. The AJ Pateras, the new Cabrillo head coach, that was his first media day. You caught up with all them. You're a Cabrillo guy as well. How are the Conks feeling, and who do they have back this year? Who are some players?
AJ Pateras says something that resonated with me, because we all know that he's from the Ventura area, and that football scene's pretty electric, but he really loved the media day. I mean, he told me that they don't do anything like this down there, and that high school scene's pretty big. So that resonated with me. Although the last time I saw Pateras, he had hair on his head, no facial hair. Now it's the reverse. But, he actually does have a very experienced group coming back. I mean, he brought out Sean Wood, brought out Ben Dixon, who is a multiple sport athlete at Cabrillo. So he already has those 2 cornerstones right there. But the vibe I got from those players is that they seem like that they're already getting accustomed to AJ Pateras. And I know that whenever there's a coaching change, and whenever you bring in a guy who has no familiarity with the school that he's at, I mean, sometimes it's a work in progress, and sometimes that work in progress takes over a year. Well, the vibe I got from these players is that they're already on the same page with Pateras and his regime.
Yeah, it's always interesting seeing a new coach come into a program, and I like what I've seen from Patera so far. It seems like he's really hands-on. Just little things like social media. You see, him start up, or whoever start up a social media account, promoting their team on Facebook, Twitter, showing what they're doing to practice, showing that they're working hard. That can help, pump up the numbers, help pump up, community support, help kids, motivate, help them stay motivated by showing them training early, kind of a reward, putting them out there on social media, getting in contact with the media, and coming to our media day was great. He has a big season ahead, his first season at Cabrillo, and he took the time to come and promote his kids, promote his team, and make sure they were represented at our media day. So I think he's handling everything very well.
One of the things that Pateras did hint at is that he wants to bring back the physical landscape that defined a lot of Cabrillo teams. Some of the teams that were led by Craig Knowles, also the teams led by his father Ed Knowles, some of the Steve Haskins led teams, and I'm sure, Kenny, you remember some of those teams pretty well. But Pateras feels like that maybe the physical element hasn't always been there, hasn't consistently been there, so he's trying to bring that back. In fact, I think it was about a couple of days ago, I saw Cabrillo perform an Oklahoma drill, and that drill is starting to become a little bit more of a dinosaur, but Cabrillo, full pads and all, they were going after it.
Yeah, so and that was a team that beat Santa Maria last year, and went through a lot of turmoil last year, and they have some pieces back. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're a little more impressive this year than they were last year with everything they went through last year. Moving on to that Santa Maria team, Dan Ellington brought his star cast. They have three star players back on offense, and Bobby Ruiz, Isaiah Garcia, and Blake Truitt. Blake Truitt is a returning quarterback, and he's a senior now. They're all three seniors, and I expect a lot of things out of those guys this year after going 5-5 last year. Falling to Napomo in the season finale, 19-14. That game was pretty much a Northern League championship game, and they came up just a bit short. Didn't make the playoffs, but Dan Ellington is confident in his group, and he's probably the guy who stuck out the most to me on Saturday. He was fired up to be there. He wanted to make sure his guys were well represented there, and I think that kind of his team feeds off of that. They seem confident. They're very ready for the season to begin. They have a good schedule for them. The Northern League is really interesting this year with Mission Prep falling out and moving back to 8-man. So now the Northern League just has 4 teams in it. So if you win 2 games, you're pretty much going to be the league champion. So that, this kind of makes it interesting there. But they're in Division 12 again. That's a good division for them. If they make the playoffs, who knows how they compete in Division 12. I think they could definitely be one of the better teams in that division. I wouldn't be surprised if they're the Northern League favorite at this point with what they return. And Napomo kind of taking a step back. We're kind of unsure with what Napomo has this year, losing its quarterback. Tony Dodge, though, has shown in his previous seasons that he can kind of keep things going there. I think he did mention the numbers were down a little bit, so maybe Santa Maria is going to rise to the top in the Northern League, above Templeton, above Morro Bay, and above Napomo. So it's going to be interesting to see. And I love just the energy and the mentality that Dan Ellington had over there Saturday. He was taking it like it was a competition there. He wanted his guys to be first, be in every photo that they can be in. And I think that's how you got to kind of approach this thing after the season. They're coming off going 5-5. So Santa Maria, I'm fired up to see how they do this year, and I think they're going to get off to a hot start. They just gotta play their game and let their 3-headed monster on offense go to work. They definitely have some pieces on defense with Gerardo Zul and Gabriel Bravo as well on that team. Jonathan Ramos, who was injured last year, I think he's going to have a big bounce back season. So I'm excited for Santa Maria, and Santa Maria is excited to be at Media Day again. We'll go to Napomo next. We mentioned them a little bit. Talked to Gage Wynn some. Talked to Tony Dodge some. This is his 3rd season. He's kind of unsure of what he got this year. They're hosting PV to start the year, and they're going to be hosting their former quarterback, Nicholas Robledo, who is now at PV. So interesting start to the season for Napomo, but they got Elias Pua back. Diego Raquelme is going to be pretty good. Kenny, how do you feel about Napomo this year, and where do you think they stack up within that Northern League?
Well, as you mentioned, Pioneer Valley will play at Napomo in the season opener. There are 2 of the teams I'm focusing on for my source of that. Pioneer Valley has just about all of their skill position players coming back. Napomo has just about none of their skill position players coming back. So obviously Pioneer Valley is stepping up in that department. Napomo is a little more seasoned on defense than they are on offense. You mentioned Diego Raquelme. and Gage Wynn led the league in interceptions last year. They'll be good anchors. I think Nepoma will be competitive in the Northern League. Dodge mentioned that Templeton should be in the mix. He said Templeton was pretty young last year, and they weren't bad last year. So I would say that Santa Maria would be the favorite. Pioneer Valley, the big concern for them is numbers. I think their numbers are even more a concern than Nepoma's is. John Ruiz, Pioneer Valley's coach, said he will consider himself fortunate if he carries 40 this year. So that he said, frankly, that is a worry for them, the numbers.
Yeah, so be sure to look out for that Nepoma PV game to start the year. I think it's going to be interesting with PV winning last year in the season opener at PV, but they're playing at Nepoma this year, so they're going to be fired up for that. You mentioned Gage Wynn. He was a fun interview. He talked about he wants to get that interception record. He had 5 last year to lead the Northern League, and he wants to break Peyton Witcher's record of 9 career interceptions at Nepoma High School. So if he gets 4 this year, he'll tie it. If he ends up with 5 again this year, he'll break that record. I don't know if quarterbacks are going to be testing him as much as they did last year. Maybe he'll, just be focused on breaking up passes or, just making sure they don't even throw it to his side of the field this year. But he'll be trying to break that record, and I like hearing that from players. We know they like to achieve personal accolades, get so many yards, do all this. That's why they keep stats, but not many players will admit it. So Gage was kind of honest about that. He wants to get that INT record, so that was cool to see. Moving back to PV, you mentioned them quite a bit. They have an interesting thing going on at quarterback with Matthew Garcia and Nicholas Robledo over there. Nicholas transferred from Nepomo to PV. Not many teams have, one quarterback that's a senior that has varsity experience, but PV has 2, so maybe that's a good thing for them. In case injuries happen, something happens, they have a backup there, and they're both great athletes, so I wouldn't be surprised if they find a way to contribute somewhere else. Maybe they'll do, dual quarterback roles, even though they are pretty similar players. Maybe Robledo has an edge athletically. Maybe they have a different little package for another guy, for Garcia, when Robledo's starting. Who knows what they'll do there, but I was really also impressed with how they handled it. Talking to Matthew Garcia, it was kind of professionalism. We're just going to battle. It's a healthy competition. They make us better, going against each other. So I was kind of pleased with seeing that professionalism. You don't see that, in later stages in life, but for high school kids to kind of handle it well, that was good to see. That Nicholas Robledo and Matthew Garcia are both handling it very well. And Robledo, was honest. He's like, if I'm not playing quarterback, I could play somewhere else. And Garcia felt the same way. So that was good to see. Michael Bourbon is going to be more of a receiver this year. He was a running back. He's fun to talk to. I think he's confident, and he expects a lot out of himself this year as well. So PV has a lot of pieces back, even though they do miss Leo Partida Ruiz, who may have been their best player last year, but I think they could, make
He's
some.
He's a leader on offense and defense last year.
Yeah, Kenneth Huberry is going to kind of fill in for him on the back end of that defense as kind of a safety guy. So I think PV can kind of, show some things this year. They got off to a really good start last year, but kind of faltered a little bit down the stretch. Moving over to San Ynez, another Los Padres League team. Lorenzo, you kind of focused on them. Very exciting team, and just the last 2 seasons has been really exciting for San Ynez with the progress they've made, winning 8 games the last 2 years. Although they haven't made the playoffs yet, we keep talking about that. But Josh McClurg, I kind of see a lot of similarities between McClurg and Jones, how they handle things. They're outgoing. Their approach is very mature and businesslike. They also like to have some fun. So I see some similarities between them. You talk to some of the San Ynez players, and you talk to McClurg. What's the vibe coming off of San Ynez?
In regards to McClurg, one other thing we should mention is that he's very meticulous, like a Jones, but he also has a lot of pride in his community. You see Jones just really having a lot of pride in Lompoc. I feel like McClurg, being around him, he really loves the San Ynez community to the point where he doesn't want to leave. Now, I was really impressed with how big Jasper Cadlick is. He actually looks bigger than Gabe Pendergrass, and it was Gabe who had the breakout year last year. But, McClurg just can't wait to get the ball in the hands of both Gabe and Cadlick. And the biggest question is going to be who replaces Mike McCoy. And, McClurg made it point blank that you can't replace a guy like that. But Dustin Gregg is just as electrifying on the football field now. I've seen him play baseball, and he's a stellar baseball player at that. But, I'm excited to see what he does on the football field. And, I don't know what it is with San Ynez, but it seems like if you're 5'7" or 5'8", you get placed in quarterback, and people underestimate you. I mean, you just end up shredding defenses.
Yeah.
So I'll be interesting to see Greg, but hey, Greg has two very big receivers to go give the football to.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that you mentioned that because I think Ynez went through that same thing before when they had Travis Welker, who was a catcher on the baseball team and the quarterback, and he was about the same size as Greg. And I think that was 3 or 4 years ago. Welker went on to be a very good baseball player at Hancock, and I think he played at Cal State LA as well. So they've kind of gone through that before, having an undersized guy who happens to play catcher on the baseball team move over and play the quarterback role on the football team. And I wouldn't be surprised if Greg has a productive season. That's definitely going to be a huge thing for Ynez this year. They need somebody to kind of, you can't really replace what McCoy did last year, but someone can kind of fill in his shoes somewhat. That's going to be huge.
One thing that McClurg mentioned too that I believe also should get some recognition, they only lose one player on defense, and that's McCoy. Wow. They bring back 10 guys, and one of those guys is their top ball hawk, Ben Schaefer, who had 5 picks last year, and he's a tall, rangy safety. So, McClurg has plenty of toys to play with down there.
Yeah, I definitely like Schaefer, and Travis Freeland has led that defense the last couple years. So I believe he is back as well. He wasn't at Media Day, but Travis Freeland has been one of the best defensive players in the area, and he's a senior now. So Ynez should have another good year, though Dustin Gregg is definitely going to have to replace some of the production that Mike McCoy kind of provided last year. Now, we're going back to the Santa Maria Valley. I know we got 11 teams to go through, so quite a few stuff. This is what we kind of been going through the last couple of days since Media Day. So we'll go with Rigetti. I kind of handled that one, talked to some of their players and Coach Ed Herman. And Ed Herman was upfront about it. He wasn't happy with a 1-9 season, but he does feel the team has made some strides in the right direction. And I agree with him. The offensive line had kind of been a tough part of the team the last couple of years, and it sounds like they've really focused on replacing that, or not replacing it, but repairing it and getting that offensive line up to where it needs to be. Nathan Bakke sounds like he's going to be a tackle on both sides of the ball. He seems like a good kind of anchor point that you want to have on that offensive line. So I think the Rigetti offensive line is going to be improved this year. The quarterback situation, still kind of up in the air, but I got a feeling that Brandon Giddings is going to be the guy this year. So they're going to be young at quarterback, but they're going to have a good group of running backs with Damian Robles, who led the team in rushing last year. Derek Imel provided some ball carrying last year. So I think those two guys are going to be relied upon running the ball, and I think they're reliable as well. Damian Robles is a fun guy. He's smaller. I think he's about 5'5", maybe 5'6", but he's got some bulk to him, probably 180, maybe 170. So he mentioned that he likes to run over guys, which is always good to see. Doesn't have a lot of speed, but he mentioned that he's working on his cuts, his moves. So I expect him to have a reliable season running the ball. 500 yards at least I would expect out of him if he stays healthy. Derek Imel can provide 500 more, as Rigetti didn't crack the 1,000-yard mark rushing the ball as a team last year. So running the ball is going to be huge for them. They do have one of the better athletes in the area, in Jalen Davis. We saw him during the basketball season. A lot of fun to watch on the basketball court. I think he's going to provide that huge jolt of athleticism for the Warriors this year, playing on offense and defense a little bit. He can jump out of the gym during the basketball season, so I expect him to kind of, be a game breaker, a big pass catcher down the field this year for Rigetti's offense. I think that defense is going to be kind of headed in the right direction. They do lose Zach Wilson, who transferred over to St. Joseph, but I think that defense is headed in the right direction. And I think the offense was mainly what kept them back somewhat last year. So if that offense holds on to the ball more this year, I think they're going to be, much better than what they showed last year with 1-9. I think their schedule's a little bit better this year too, although they do play in that rugged Pac-5 league. Moving on to 8-man football. We got Orchid Academy was our last team over there at Media Day. Doug May brought his guys. I caught up with him and had one of my breakthrough moments with Doug May. He actually mentioned a game he's looking forward to. That's not the next one on his schedule. Almost every coach will say we take it 1 week at a time. We're just focused on the next opponent. But he actually, pointed out that the third game of the season against Mojave is a huge one for them. They almost beat Mojave last year, one of the better teams in Division I, 8-man. and they faltered a little bit late. So Doug May was like, that's going to show us where we're at. That's a huge game for us. And, we kind of circled that one on our calendar a little bit. And I was like, that's cool that you said that. And he was like, well, we are taking it 1 week at a time. But he did mention that Mojave game's huge. So I'm looking forward to that one. You caught up with some of their better players. Alex Andrade's back, and the quarterback Darren Miller's back as well. What were some of the things that Orchid Academy was talking about, and what did you kind of glean from what they said?
I like Andrade right away because he was wearing a certain team, Fresno State. So, let's get that out the way. But, you mentioned the Mojave game, but it's crazy because those players mentioned the game against Kate. They're looking forward to that game as well. That's a huge one on their schedule. And, they seem like a really confident group. And Doug May's been there, I believe it's his second year at the helm. And I already get the sense that these guys already know what his expectations are. They already know what he wants, what he wants installed. And the players seem very positive, and they know in 8-man football, one missed tackle means a 70-yard touchdown. So it's actually a very exciting brand of football, and these guys have Mojave and Kate on their schedule.
Yeah, they're in the Condor League, and they get Darren Miller back. I think he had 14 touchdown passes last year against just 4 interceptions. I think he battled through injuries a little bit. He's been their quarterback for, I think, this might be his 4th season. He's a senior now, so he's been starting at quarterback for a long time for them. He's a big kid, and I think he's going to have a big season offensively for the Spartans this year. And if you're not familiar with 8-man, I would definitely try to check out some games this year. It's always high scoring, always high octane kind of offense there. So Orchid Academy is going to be playing around all over the Santa Maria Valley this year as their home games kind of rotate through the area schools. So if you're kind of inkling for some 8-man football, be sure to check out their schedule and see where they're playing. And it's going to be a fun night. Anytime you see 8-man football. And another 8-man team, kind of an older team in the area, VCA, has been playing 8-man football forever. We caught up to some of their players. Defensive coordinator Randy Stanford was on hand. He's been helping out P. Fortier, the head coach, for a very long time. So they know what they're doing over there at VCA. And I caught up with Trenton Lane. He's going to be the returning quarterback this year, running that triple option offense. And he was a rare kid from what I usually see from VCA. They're usually reserved, quiet, but he had a little bit of brashness to him, a little bit of confidence, a little bit of swagger. You don't always see that from VCA with them being a little more reserved. But, he was fun. He sounds like he's going to have a fun season running that triple option offense. He's run it before. He's confident. He's run 8-man pretty much his whole life. So I expect Trenton Lane to kind of lead that offense. They're already looking ahead to that Cuyama game. They think that's going to be big. They think Coast Union is going to be challenging the Coast Valley League Championship this year. They think they're going to be in the mix. Randy Stanford said, we're going to be right there with those other teams. Cuyama's going to be tough, though. Kenny, you caught up with some of their guys. How did they feel about the season, and how do you feel about VCA this year?
They feel pretty optimistic, I think, mainly because they do have a lot of guys back, including Lane. Lane and I think some of the other guys have said they can see them going to the triple option a fair amount. They think they have the running backs to do it. Sounds like VCA has at least 3 or 4 very capable backs. So I would not be surprised to see them be heavily run oriented this year. Pete Fortier says he'll have 15 to 20 players. That's decent numbers for an 8-man football team. I think their big goal this year is to get back to the postseason. They didn't have a good enough record to earn an automatic berth last year. I guess they could have gone as that large, but they decided to pass. I think they had some other commitments going on. But I think the vibe I got for them is a big goal of theirs is to get back to the postseason. It figures that they will. Cuyama Valley and Coast Union are 2 pretty salty teams in the league, and if they don't get at least a split against them, they will likely have to sweep Shannon and Maricopa, which I think Randy Sanford has said that might not, and Pete Fortier might not exactly be a pushover because they have not. So it could be an interesting league this year. Yeah, but I think VCA will be competitive.
I think Maricopa got VCA last year, and that usually doesn't happen. I think they're pretty upset with losing to Maricopa.
Right, that usually does not happen.
Yeah, so they can't let that happen this year if they don't get a split against those 2 teams that you mentioned. It's interesting, 18 to 20s VCA, I talked to Doug May, they got about 34 kids on their team. So, they definitely have a little bit more depth, and they're going to be moving to the central section, I think, next year after this season, and that's going to be a whole different ball game for them. because they're going to have to play a lot of Bakersfield schools, a lot of Fresno schools. That's what Doug May was saying. They're going to be traveling maybe a little bit more.
They might have to move
out.
up to 11-man if they keep getting those kind of numbers.
I mean, they're already traveling a lot here in the southern section as well. So it's going to be traveling a lot and to the valley once they move to the central section. So it's an interesting frontier that Orchid Academy's embarking on, and VCA this year. So 8-man football, and VCA is also going to be playing Friday night games as well. They used to play Saturday afternoon games, but now they're back on the Friday night schedule. So if you're looking for some VCA Lions football this year, it's going to be on Friday nights. I think they have one Thursday night game as well. All right, we're finally down to our last team, Hancock, on the JUCO level. We had 3 Hancock players attend Media Day, which is great. They haven't been to one before, and the 3 kids they brought are all local kids and from the SLO County. We had Benny Wilcom and Alex Checky, both from AG High School, and then Nick Kimball, a Napomo High grad. Nick Kimball was our all-area MVP, I think, in 2014. I think he graduated in 2015 after Napomo won a CIF championship. Kimball had something like 20 TD catches his senior year of high school, and he expects a lot of production this year at Hancock. He told me he expects to get 1,500 yards, all-purpose yards this year. So another refreshing dose of honesty from Nick Kimball this year. He wants to rack up a lot of yards this year, and I think he can do it. He's not the biggest kid, but he definitely has some athleticism. He can play all over the field, and he even kicked for Hancock some last year. So I think those guys are going to be huge. Alex Checky might be one of my favorite players in the area, JUCO level or high school level. He's a lot of fun to watch at AG High School. They called him the Tick over there, and I think he still carries that nickname because he's probably 5'7", maybe 170 pounds, and he can take a beating. He can run between the tackles. He can hit the edge. He can play kind of a wide-out role. He played a lot of defense at AG, but he's going to be mainly offense this year as a sophomore at Hancock. So those 2 guys, Nick Kimball and Alex Checky, are going to be productive guys on offense. Talking to Anthony Mays, who's now their quarterbacks coach and receivers coach, a SLO High grad, played with Cameron Ars Payne when they were both at Hancock. He said they're trying to figure out things at quarterback, but he's confident that Nick Kimball and Alex Checky are going to be big-time producers on the offensive side. Lorenzo, you caught up with Benny Wilcom. Long line of Wilcoms who have started AG and at Hancock. His brother Matt's now at Arizona Christian, I believe. How does Benny feel about the season, and what do you kind of expect out of Hancock?
He's another one who's very confident as well. I mean, he's a ball hawk when he's on the field, and I mean he's well aware that in his second year at Hancock he has to take more of a leadership initiative, especially with some of the young defenders they have. But I'm sure like going against a guy like Alex Checky, he brings out the best in him. So, he's another very verbose, confident dude for that defense, and I think it's exactly what Chris Dutra is looking for out of his defensive unit. So, I'm with you as well. I mean, I'm excited to see what Checky does on the football field because I saw a little bit of him at Aurora Grande against the Tascadero about a couple of years ago, and I was impressed by how this 5'6" dude was just lighting defenses up. So, I'll be curious to see like how Hancock uses him.
Yeah, he can definitely play. Kenny, you saw that Hancock closed out the season strong last year. A better start would have definitely put them in a better position. I think they won at least a bowl game this year. What do you expect out of Hancock?
Hancock, it's a little hard to tell sometimes because being a 2-year school, sometimes they'll get more turnover. Guys leaving after their freshman year than 4 years. My feel is, yes, they don't have a proven starting quarterback, but Nick Kimball seemed very confident in both quarterback prospects they do have. He said one is a really good runner, one is a really good passer. They're both good at getting the ball out of their hands. Nick said that he's not likely to kick at Hancock this year, but the way Hancock has been losing kickers, going down to injury, who knows? They actually went to the 2-point conversion after almost all touchdowns. I think it was last year, and they were usually pretty successful. I think they had a better than 50% rate, at least at one time. It's harder to tell with Hancock because it's harder to tell what the other school's coming back. But I do think they will gather some momentum from that 3-game winning streak. If they had beaten Santa Barbara after they had that big lead, they probably would have gone to a bowl game. That stuck in their, being Santa Barbara especially, that stuck in their craw a little bit. But They won their last 3 games, and in at least one of those, Antelope Valley, they were decided underdog going in. Antelope
That was a
Valley
big win.
wound up going to a bowl game and winning their bowl game. So yes, that was a big win. Yeah, I think it left a good taste in the mouths of the guys coming back. They're pretty. I think they can build off that. I think they have a chance. I think they do have a chance to be competitive this year.
Yeah, and one little note I picked up, seeing the Hancock guys, is that they were kind of interested or hoping to get Sawyer May from Arroyo Grande over there at Hancock. It didn't work out. I think Sawyer decided to go up to Oregon to a D3 school and play up there, but I would have loved to see Sawyer May play at Hancock with some of the guys they have. Hooking up with Alex Checky again, who they played together at Arroyo Grande High School. Nick Kimball's a SLO County guy. So Sawyer May, they didn't quite carry on that tradition that Hancock has had of almost always having a local quarterback play. So I think whoever's going to be starting this year.
Andrew Jones played there once.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Troy Prover at Mays, who's from
Matt
SLO.
Albright.
Matt Albright was there last year.
Jonathan
Curry
Daly.
Parham. Yeah, they almost
Curry
always
Parham.
have a local quarterback, but this year it sounds like it's going to be an out-of-the-region kind of guy. So I think they'll be fine either way with some of the pieces that they do have back, and I think they'll have some other running back options besides Checky, who's kind of an explosive guy, but I don't know if you want him carrying the ball 20 times, at the JUCO level. I don't know if that's what you want. So Hancock will be starting their season a little bit later than the high school teams, so we'll have some great coverage during their season, and we have some great preseason coverage coming up. You guys had to listen to us talk about the season today, but we'll let you guys hear all the players and coaches that we interviewed at Media Day on Saturday as we release and publish all the videos that we did, all the stories and photos and galleries that are coming up from our Media Day. So be sure to keep an eye out for that stuff, and our preseason special section will be published Sunday, August 20th in the Santa Maria Times and Lompoc Record. So thank you guys for tuning in to another edition of 805 Sports Talk.